This lesson begins 2 Samuel chapter 15, and chapters 15 through 18 constitute the rebellion of Absalom, beginning with the plot, the actual rebellion itself, the return of David, the battle that ensues, and ultimately the death and the reaction to the death of Absalom. I'm going to divide this into three parts, chapters 15, 16, 17, and 18, and I know that's four parts, but we'll divide it up into those four parts by chapters. Chapter 15 begins with the introduction of Absalom. It doesn't really tell us how long Absalom was doing the things that he did, but it does tell us that he made quite a spectacle of himself. He prepared chariots, horses, 50 men to run before him. He wanted everybody to see him and to know that he was somebody. He also made friends of everyone who came to seek counsel or judgment from the king. When he saw that they were coming for the purpose of seeking or having a complaint resolved by the king, Absalom said, "Oh, I wish I was the judge. Then they would come to me and I would do that person justice." And he basically, by doing this, courted the favor of all the people and made himself quite favorable in the eyes of all the people. And as he did these things, people became a little bit more enamored with him. When it says he stole the heart of the men of Israel, it's not as if he was actually a thief, but this was his plan to bring the person over to his side. In verses 7 through 8, one thing that stands out is that Absalom apparently said that it, or the record states, didn't mean Absalom. The record states that after 40 years, Absalom had made some sort of vow, and he wanted to make sure that the vow was fulfilled or repaid, and begged leave of the king that he might be able to leave and to do this. The number 40 really doesn't seem like it fits, because David only reigned for 40 years combined over all of Israel. So the number 40 doesn't seem to fit in the sense of 40 years here, and it couldn't be related to the age of Absalom either. Just for the same reasons we just mentioned in regard to the reign of David. So when we look at this, we have to wonder what exactly the 40-year period would be. And those who make it a habit to study the textual information and such have adopted the Syriac, the Arabic, and the Vulgate, which instead of using 40 years says 4 years, and that probably suits more with the chronology of the text than would 40 years. But regardless, there was a period of time that had passed, and Absalom wanted to go and to pay the vow. Verse 9 tells us that the king told him to go, And then with verse 10, we find the rebellion beginning. It says Absalom sent spies throughout all Israel. And what he told them to do was, when they heard the sound of the trumpet, that they were to say, Absalom has become king in Hebron. And we look at this, the conspiracy had been secret, and now it's going to be completely blown up, and everyone is going to have to choose a side as to who they would go to. So what we see in verse 12, David had a counselor, Ahithophel, and this counselor, a trusted advisor for David, is apparently not surprised at any of the things that take place, and we might from this draw a conclusion that he was somehow in league with Absalom on the things that that Absalom had been planning. And the people increased continually with Absalom, is the way verse 12 leads it. In other words, Absalom's rule, his hold on the territory in Hebron and areas surrounded, became even stronger. And somebody came and told David in verse 13 that the hearts of the people were after Absalom. And at this, David decided that it was time to flee. And he decided it was better to leave than to have Absalom destroy the city. And so the king and his servants said, we're ready to do whatever you want. And everybody gathers what they need, and they leave. The king did leave 10 women who were concubines to take care of the house. And so in verse 17, the king goes forth and goes quite a ways, and then decides that he needs to tarry or to rest. And everybody continues on. The Kerethites, the Pelethites, all the Gittites, 600 men which came after him from Gath, passed on. And the king said unto Ittai the Gittite, wherefore goest thou also with us? Return to thy place and abide with the king, for thou art a stranger, and also in an exile. And Ittai in verse 21 said, as the Lord liveth, and as my lord the king liveth, surely in what place my lord the king shall be, whether in death or life, even there also will thy servant be. And David then said, pass over, or go with us. And so Ittai the Gittite and all his men passed over with him. And verse 23 tells us that there was a great weeping or sadness that came over the country because of the things that had taken place. And finally the king himself passes over the brook Kidron on their way to the wilderness. And then Zadok the priest, in verse 24, comes with the Levites bearing the ark of the covenant of God. And Abiathar went up, and all the people who were with him had come out of the city. And verse 25, the king wants Zadok to take the ark of the covenant back, and he says, the Lord decides that I've found favor with him, he'll bring me back to see the ark, and to live again. But if not, then that's the way that it shall be. And verse 27 is interesting because David's already planning for how he's going to get his kingdom back. So he said to Zadok the priest, "Art not thou a seer, a prophet?" He said, "Return into the city in peace, and you 2 sons with you, Ahimaaz thy son, and Jonathan the son of Abiathar. See, I'll tarry in the plain of the wilderness till there come word from you to certify me, or to let me know that everything is okay, and that I'm able to go back to the city." So they return in verse 29, and David begins going up Mount Olivet, and he weeps, had his head covered. He's in mourning over the things that have taken place, and he's also barefoot, and all the people that are around him are the same as David. And David is also told how widespread the conspiracy was. In verse 31, Ahithophel is also among the conspirators with Absalom. And David cries out unto the Lord to turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness. David finally reaches the top of the mount where he worshiped God, and Hushai, the Archite, came out to meet David and intends to go with David on the things that on the journey that he is to go on. And David tells him, even though he's a friend of David, one of his counselors, we would understand that by doing what David wants, he's able to place himself in a position to thwart the counsel of Ahithophel. And the man decides that he will do as David requested, and he comes back into the city in verse 37, and that concludes chapter 15, and we'll pick up chapter 16 in the next video.